Hey everyone, this is Philip Pullman's #1 fan, and today I have something very special for all of you. First of all, we will be rating his Dark Materials, the trilogy, plus some of the short stories and the Book of Dust, and I'll be sharing with you the latest news on the Book of Dust, Volume 3. So let's get started. This is my first tiering video, so go easy on me. I have 4 tiers for you. Magical, that would be one of my favorite Pullman books that are out there concerning Lyra and Pantalaimon. Great means the book was great. However, there were a few things that I personally would have tweaked if I was the author. And then there is Not Bad, which is the book's okay, it's decent, but I would have made significant revisions. And then my last category, and like, oh my gosh, we'll talk about it when we get there. There is a category that it's, how did this book even get published? So I will go over the books in the order in which I first read them. So no surprise here. The first book that we have is The Golden Compass. This is the first book in the trilogy where we meet Lyra and Pan for the very first time. Now, this is a little bit of a secret, but the first time I ever picked this book up was years ago. It was a long time ago. I believe I got it from the library and I DNF'd it. I was only the first maybe 25 to 50 pages in, and I didn't get it. I didn't understand what was going on. There wasn't enough pieces where I felt connected to the story yet to feel invested. So when the library said, hey, where's our book? I'm like, okay, here it is. And I turned it in. This time when I picked it up, once I got past that probably 50-page mark, I was hooked. I loved it. It was super magical. I loved it by the end. I could not wait to know what the next step was. So of course, The Golden Compass, in other parts of the world, they know this book as The Northern Lights. This book I am classifying as magical. There might have been, so just because I classify a book as magical doesn't mean that it's perfect. But it's perfect to me because even though I might admit there might be a flaw or two in the book, I'm willing to overlook it because I enjoyed it so much. The next book we have is The Subtle Knife. Now this book I had a little bit of an issue with because, like many of you just read The Golden Compass, and what do you expect The Subtle Knife to be about? You expect it to be about Lyra and Pantalaimon. So I was annoyed that there was this new character named Will, and I felt like he was like forced on us. And I also really liked demons from the first book. I am an animal lover, of course. So when we were introduced to Will and then his world doesn't have demons, I felt like, this book is just not nearly as good as the first one. I also felt like there wasn't as much action and family dramas as the first one. So for that book, I would put that as, sadly, not bad. It was an okay story, but it wasn't my favorite by any stretch of the imagination. And there were some things in there that I had expected there to be, and I'm like, that's weird. Like I would not have had the book written in that way. So that will lead us to The Amber Spyglass. This book, I mean, Pullman had a big task. This was his first trilogy. This was book 3 of the trilogy. He has to wrap it all up in some way and have it make sense. All the loose ends, how is he gonna tie everything together? I will say I was a little bit disappointed in the fantasy. I was disappointed in a little bit of the pacing. It was kind of slow with one of the main characters, especially in the first like 150, 200 pages of the book. But then after that point, it really got going, and Pullman has such this wonderful imagination. He comes up with things that I would never think of. And it is truly an escape when you read his books. His prose is also really good. So it was an enjoyable book. I would put this one in that unique category of great. It was almost to that magical, that unicorn, but I felt like it just a touch missed it, just because there were a few things that kind of didn't sit well with me. I was happy that we did revisit some things from book 1 that I felt were open-ended, and like, why did they not address this in immediately in book number 2? They came back to it in book 3. I'm trying to not be super specific because I know people are like crazy about spoilers, the spoiler police, which I think is ironic because Philip Pullman, like, you'll see in some of his other books that he doesn't like the thought police or like tattling on people. But people are like super crazy about spoilers. Some people, even though they watch these videos about book reviews and they're like, oh my gosh, I hate spoilers. Like, then why are you watching these book review videos? Like, you knew they were going to talk about books. It's not a surprise. Anyways, so I finished the trilogy, and then in late 2020, Pullman had this new book come out. It's a short story. It's called Serpentine. It is about 10 years after the Amber Spyglass, and it heavily references the Amber Spyglass. So if you haven't read the trilogy, you'll definitely want to do that first before picking up this one. It is super short. It's like 15 minutes. So, but it's just wonderful to be back with Lyra and Pan. It also had a lot of super deep meanings. Once you read the trilogy and you kind of knew, well, what is a demon? What does that represent? So when you go through some of the stories that they have in this short story, it was deep and it was so meaningful. It was beautiful. It stirred the emotions. It was that nostalgia of Pan and Lyra. I thought it was beautiful. It has a lot of really beautiful illustrations. I loved it. This one is definitely magical. It just felt like a special holiday with a friend that you hadn't seen in years. It was awesome. I absolutely loved it. All right, then after his Dark Materials, Pullman wrote this companion trilogy, but there's only 2 books out of the 3 have been published so far. And it's called The Book of Dust. So volumes 1 and 2 have been out. The first volume is La Belle Sauvage. This is The Book of Dust, volume 1. This book is a little weird because it's 10 years before his Dark Materials trilogy, and Lyra's just a baby. So, what can a baby really do in a book? And again, we were introduced to a new character, but this character's name is Malcolm. At first, I thought I would think the same about The Subtle Knife. Oh, they're forcing this new character on us. Like, why don't they just give us what we want, which is about Lyra and Pan? Why did they stick us with this new character? But I loved it. I will say there is a bit of a ramp up because you have to care about a character. If somebody just says, here's a character, and they went on a crazy adventure, you'd be like, well, great. So who cares if they die in the first 30 seconds because you're not invested in this character. Why should you care about this particular character? So there was a little bit of a ramp up, but once I cared about Malcolm, as soon as the action began, I felt like I was right beside Malcolm. I stayed up super late at night, super early in the morning. That's how late at night it was to read this book. I loved it. It was action-packed. It was just wonderful, especially if you've read his Dark Materials. You knew what all the characters meant in the future. So it just felt like so much was at stake. I loved it. It was a wonderful book, a wonderful experience. I loved it. This one I would also put as the great. So then around right before Christmas, I picked up the second volume. This is out of the companion trilogy to his Dark Materials. So Pullman has said that it's not a prequel or a sequel, but it's an equal with his Dark Materials. The Book of Dust, the volume or Book of Dust collection. It is supposed to be an equal with his Dark Materials. Okay, this book is huge. It is 600 plus pages, but I didn't get it. The writing, I could tell it was Pullman with the writing style. The writing is good. His prose is good. His sentences are well developed. He can definitely evoke an emotion if he wants to. He points out things that you normally wouldn't talk about. So for example, like he might write that the character put on a clean shirt. But when I talk about getting dressed in the morning, I never talk about like, I put on a clean shirt. Like I don't talk like that. I don't know of anybody else. But the way that he points it out, it kind of like sets your mind, in the right frame of mind. So I enjoyed the writing, but the story, there was no action in this. I was used to the first 1 to 200 pages is usually like a warm up for him, where you start caring about the character. The first 1 to 200 pages was a very philosophical debate or argument or discussion. I don't know how you would say that, but it was a very philosophical. And I thought, okay. Like I put in my dues. I'm ready. Where's the action? And there was no action at the very end. It was like a cut to black where you thought there was going to be action. And I'm like, where's the payoff? I spent more than 600 pages reading this. Where is the action? I also felt like it didn't feel like a cohesive story was told. So I was kind of disappointed in that. Possibly in the third book, it'll weave everything together. But in 600 plus pages, you should weave a coherent story together. Because the stories were kind of like, there were different stories, but how did it all, come tell one complete story? I wasn't sure of that. And the book itself, like this is what and I could handle that because I like Pullman's writing. I like his characters. I enjoy, I've read all these books within 1 year. So obviously I enjoy his writing. But this book did not fit with these characters or this brand. It was super dark. I mean, the whole reason why I started and why I love Golden Compass was it was magical. It would go places that I would not go, with bears and witches and different worlds and different things and the alethiometer and all these magical things and how you would read the alethiometer and coming up with all that stuff. He isn't just writing a book, he's coming up with a whole new world, but it's not overly complicated where you're lost like some of the other fantasy books that I've read. But this one, it was too real and grimy, and it was very depressing, and I could have even handled that if it was a short period of the book that was like sad and depressing, but the whole thing was very depressing and it did not fit in line with all these other books. And in fact, I felt that these two books were in contrast with they were in conflict. So I try to pretend that this book doesn't exist and that only this one existed, because I didn't like this one. And I said, and I stand by, I'm the #1 Philip Pullman fan. And when I read that, I honestly felt like I don't even want to do a video because people are going to kill me, because they know they ask me about his books and what I thought and for my insights and what did you think about The Secret Commonwealth, and they're asking me should they read it. And I want to only support this author, but I don't know what happened with The Secret Commonwealth. I don't know. So not surprised here. How did this get published? I mean, really, I would have thought that a publisher would have given the same feedback and also told the author you kind of need to trim some of this stuff down and maybe have a little bit more action in the book. If it was just a standalone and it wasn't connected with his Dark Materials or other books, I don't think it would have been published. Those are my feelings. I know people feel very strongly about the series. I do as well. I love Lyra and Pantalaimon just as much as you guys do, but I didn't like where the story went. And, you know, I appreciate your opinions. That's okay if you disagree. But I have one more surprise for you guys. I did read Lyra's Oxford. This is a little short story. It is after his Dark Materials, but it is before the Secret Commonwealth. And it kind of alludes to the Secret Commonwealth. And I think that was probably the biggest thing that I had with this book, the complaint. Like, I don't want to think about the Secret Commonwealth. I want to pretend that it just did not exist. So I wish some of those things were not in the book. But I thought it was a really well-written story. I loved hearing about Lyra and Pan and some of the other characters from his Dark Materials. I'm not going to give you too many spoilers. You'll have to pick it up yourselves. But I did really love it. I enjoyed it. I did not enjoy the Secret Commonwealth, alluding to that. I also did not like that it wasn't as deep as Serpentine. When I read that one, it just struck such a chord with me. I thought this story was good. I did enjoy it. It did strike a chord. It just wasn't, in my opinion, as good as Serpentine. And it also could have been, Serpentine had some really great illustrations. This book had some illustrations, but I don't think they were as good as the ones in Serpentine. You guys can put down below if you like Serpentine or Lyra's Oxford, or how you would rate these videos as well. So I'm going to put Lyra's Oxford in the great category. Yes, that is true. You can follow me on Twitter, Lisa of Troy, and you will definitely see things about his Dark Materials. And I did promise you guys the latest news about the Book of Dust, Volume 3. Now, here it is. I sent Philip Pullman a tweet probably some days ago, and I said, do you have any news on when the Volume 3 will be released? Because I'm ready for all the wrongs to be righted and an epic showdown. And he said, well, if you already know how it ends. Then there was another lady who said, I was reading the Amber Spyglass or rereading the Amber Spyglass this weekend, and I'm willing to pre-read Volume 3 for you. To which Philip Pullman said, oh, well, maybe you can help me write it then. And so there was a little bit of back and forth, and he said he has written some of it. So he would not commit on a release date. It sounds like it's not actually finished yet. So you guys know as much as I do now about the Book of Dust, Volume 3. I am waiting for it. I am waiting for redemption from the Secret Commonwealth. I hope that it is this major showdown. I do have some ideas about what I want Volume 3 to be about, and I might share those. You guys share with me in the comments below what you want to, if you could write Volume 3, what would be the major themes? I will give you a hint. If I was writing it, I would put in something about Will, and that I would paint him as a bad guy. And I would say that Malcolm Polstead has enough letters to spell Adam in his name, because if you remember from the trilogy, they were saying that Lyra was going to be Eve. So you guys can spin some stories and see what, I want to hear your guys' thoughts and see what you guys can come up with. If you can come up with something better, put it in the comments below. Maybe Philip Pullman will watch this video and get some good ideas. All right, I can't wait to hear from you guys. Go easy on me. This is my first hearing video. If there's anything else, His Dark Materials, that you want me to cover, put it in the comments below. You know I'll read it. I'm Lisa of Troy, everyone. Peace.